Hello, this is Chuck Hardwick Jr. and welcome to episode 7. And today we're talking about the Wonder Years. And I'm in my home office in the Ocean Beach neighborhood of San Diego. And I'm on a Zoom call during the middle of a pandemic with my father, Chuck Hardwick Senior, who is in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. How are you today, Dad?
Doing well, Chuck, and as you can see, I'm well suited for the virus. Sheila and I ordered masks about a month ago, and they still haven't come in. There's a real shortage of them, so she's been making masks, which is great. This has a filter inside of it that you can replace, and you wash the rest of the mask and put a new filter in. So I think it's a good thing to have, but there's a real shortage of a lot of materials like this, including toilet paper and paper towels and other things, but we're getting by fine.
What kind of masks did you order?
Well, I ordered this regular like surgical mask. I do have a request in from my physician to see if I can get one of those N95 masks, which really give you more protection since I am not only an old guy, but it has some underlying pulmonary and cardiac diseases, and maybe I'm a candidate for an N95 mask, but I don't have any of those yet. So good social distancing is the best tool I have for right now.
Well, on the topic of masks, as I've been walking around my neighborhood in San Diego, I've been wearing a bandana. And one thing I don't like about that is when I see someone walking pre-pandemic, I would always smile at them. And now I've realized that as I smile, they can't tell that I'm smiling. So that's a little bit frustrating. And someone told me, well, smile with your eyes and give a friendly wave. So have you encountered that at all?
Well, I'm not sure I've seen too many people smiling, but sometimes I use a bandana too. As you can see, this is one that I've worn. It's a little less convenient and a little less comfortable than a mask, but it does the job. So keep wearing your bandana, Chuck.
Will do. So let's get back to episode 7. So take us back to May of 1964. I guess I was about 2 when we moved from Tallahassee, Florida up to the Detroit area. Now, how was that Detroit area selected for you?
Well, I had actually asked for Columbus, Ohio, because I was familiar, of course, with Ohio, but was sent to Detroit because the operation there was regarded as one of the best in the Continental Banking Company system. Really good plant manager, good sales manager, good supervisor. And I was on a management training program, intended to learn the business from the ground up. So I joined the Teamsters Union, and the way the routes were assigned, the first thing I had to do was learn to pull a bread route, and they were assigned on the basis of seniority. So as a new guy, the newest guy out of 80 routes, I got the worst one. That was the one that was available by seniority. I think I had like 70 or 80 stops. Those were the days where there were a lot of small neighborhood stores. The supermarkets were really handled generally somewhat separately, some private label work. So it was a lot of work from early in the morning throughout the day. It was a hard job, but it paid well. And you certainly learned how to work, and you saw a lot of ethnic communities that you generally were not familiar with before, at least I wasn't. It was a pretty interesting job in learning the business.
So you said that you had one of the worst routes. What was one of the better routes like? What made yours worse? Was it a lot of stops, or was it the demographics of the neighborhood, or just hard to drive, or what was kind of the difference between the better routes and the route that they put you on initially?
All of the above, all the things that some of the best routes would be those who had fewer stops, but you would sell more bread per stop. So some of the older guys who had been around for a long time could come in at 6 o'clock maybe in the morning and be done by noon, and they would have delivered a whole lot of bread and made their sales very successfully, very quickly. But those routes, I can understand that were assigned on the basis of seniority. So the only time I saw those routes was much later when I was in supervision and asked to pull vacation routes.
Interesting. So what was it like living in the Detroit area back in that time period, 64, 65?
Well, Detroit itself was a very prosperous area. Of course, it was a home of worldwide automobiles. And we found a community of Dearborn which is home of Ford Motor Company. People who live there called Ford Motor Company Fords. Not sure why, but they just did. Dearborn was a very safe community. I found out after we moved in that the local mayor was known to be a bit of a racist, and there were issues like that, but I never saw any of that. I was not really aware of it at the time. Dearborn today is populated, I think the majority population is Middle Eastern. A lot of people from Lebanon, from Algeria, from Egypt, and other areas. A large Muslim population is there now. I don't recall that being the case at all, but I lived there, 50 some years ago.
So when you were in Kentucky, you were a fan of the Cincinnati Reds, and then when you moved to Akron, you became kind of a fan of the Cleveland Indians. Did you become a fan of the Detroit Tigers at all?
Somewhat. I went to some games. I think you were probably too young for me to take you, but I remember one of our neighbors would go. So he and I went down to Detroit Stadium, the Tiger Stadium, which was only a block away from the bakery at Wonder Bread. So I knew that neighborhood pretty well. And I think, in fact, I would park in Wonder Bread's lot for employees and then go to walk up to the stadium.
Well, I actually have an early childhood memory of you taking me to see Mickey Mantle play at Tiger Stadium.
Really?
It must have been, I must have been 4 or something. Yeah, but anyway,
I'm surprised for that.
it just so happens I've got a couple of photos that I'd like to have you explain. So tell us about, where did we live there when we first moved up to that area?
Well, that's the house in Dearborn. Pat and I and you and Ginger lived on the first floor. That's the door on the right in the picture. There was a couple living upstairs, nice people. The house was fairly comfortable. The big drawback to it was that it had a coal-fired furnace, which when your mom heard that, when your grandmother heard that, she was horrified, came running up wanting to see, was afraid that we were living in some unsafe place. But it worked out pretty well. At least I learned how to build a fire in the furnace. And I think Pat would keep it going in the wintertime. And that's us obviously sitting on the front steps.
So Dearborn, there was a Ford factory there. Were some of your neighbors employees of Ford?
Well, a lot of people there worked for Fords, and people in the neighborhood. I met others at church. We went to church nearby. And it was throughout Dearborn, to work at Ford's was considered a really good job, and they were good jobs.
And what was the neighborhood like? Was it a safe neighborhood, or was there a park nearby?
Well, it was, as you could see by that house, it was residential, and it was an ethnic neighborhood. I remember there was a store that I used to shop at, neighborhood store called My Jack's, probably a Polish store. And when you were about 3 years old, I was leaving and you said, I want to go to your Jack's. So,
Okay, so do you know anything about this photo? Who might be in that photo?
well, I recognize you on the second step, and Ginger and a little girlfriend. She looks kind of familiar, but I don't remember the little girl's name. Looks like you're waving goodbye. And that's dated October of '66. So that was taken probably, well, maybe that's when it was developed. I'm not sure when it was taken, but it's clearly in Dearborn. And we moved out of that house in, I think, August or September of '66. So that picture was obviously developed later.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit more about working for Wonder Bread, and how did you fit in with the other drivers and that sort of thing?
Well, that's really a good question. And I wasn't very popular. I think that there was resentment on the part of other drivers. It was pretty clear that I was a company man, that after all, they had sent me to college and graduate school, and they felt that I was probably given special advantages. And that's one reason I think that I was not given any special advantages. As I said, I had to start off with the worst route in the bakery. The job was an interesting one, though. I had the route on the east side of Detroit, leaving it early in the morning, about 5:30, I believe, is my recollection. Your mom used to get up and fix me breakfast, and and get me out the door. And it was a 5-day-a-week job. We were off work on Sundays and off work on my dropout day, I think was either Tuesday or Wednesday. I forgot now which one it was. But it was a job of dealing with people. The instructions were fresh bread, best position on the bread route, good grocer cooperation, and merchandising. And that's what we tried to do to increase sales. It was a complicated process too, because you had to juggle inventories all the time. You didn't want to finish the day with fresh bread left in the truck to go back to the bakery overnight, nor did you want to run out before you got towards the end of your route. So it was really a pretty demanding job. I wore a brown uniform that said Wonder Bread on it. I don't think it said my name. It said Wonder Bread on it. The other bread men were an interesting group, above average in intelligence, obviously hard workers. They tended to be not college, but high school graduates. Many of them were heavy drinkers. I saw, for the first time, I saw a lot of gambling. They would gamble on horse races. I remember one of them was a driver in harness racing. And he came into the room and said, there's a settlement room where the men would get in and turn in their money. I remember him saying, okay, guys, you got to understand, it's my turn to win tonight. I'm riding horse number so-and-so. I recommend you bet on it. And of course I didn't, I wouldn't even know how to do that. But I heard later he won, and it made me think, maybe those races aren't exactly on the above board, because he knew he was going to win before the race was ever won. So it was just, for me, from the background I had, this was a whole different world. These people were far different. Jewish communities, Chaldean communities, Syrian grocers, and a lot of the routes there, part of mine on the east side of Detroit went into a very rough neighborhood. So I was told how to fold my money, always keep the $1 bills on the outside, then I'll put your money in 3 different pockets, lock your truck up. They had a lot of rules. And the profit margins were so small that drivers were instructed not to keep their engines running in the wintertime, which they wanted to do to keep warm, because you're in and out of these doors, so a truck would cool off really in a hurry. And the supervisors would clock your miles per gallon. And if you did not get good miles per gallon, you'd hear about it in your review when you checked in and said, you must be running your engine. You're supposed to turn your engine off. It got to such a point that I know some of them take money out of their pocket and put it in the gas tank just because they didn't want to be aggravated by a supervisor looking at them. So it was quite an experience.
It seems to me a job like that, bad weather could really make your day go poorly. Do you have any memories of bad blizzards or getting caught in torrential downpours or flooding or anything like that?
Well, actually, that's a good question, because actually we like blizzards. In blizzards, people would go in the store and buy everything. So you'd go back and all the bread would be sold, the brown and serve rolls would be gone, the stuffing would be gone, the breadcrumbs, everything. It's amazing. They just clean the rack out. Kind of like what I'm seeing in the pandemic down here. Everything's cleaned out, everything's gone. But it was, I liked a good snowstorm, and we had some big ones. And in fact, I remember driving on a very snowy day. My supervisor, Jim Morris, who was a very important guy in my life, he was a wonderful guy, was with me, and we were trying to stop the truck, and we couldn't. It slid into a car. Didn't do a lot of damage, but did some. We called the police to report the accident. I remember the Detroit police, it was snowing, and Jim Morris said, would you like to come out and file a report? And I said, are you kidding? We're not coming out in weather like this. So not sure whatever happened. It wasn't a major accident, but it was probably held against my record for a chargeable accident.
So what else did you do during that time period besides work for Wonder Bread?
Well, with an MBA degree, MBAs weren't that common, actually, then as they were now. I got a job at Wayne State University teaching marketing at night. And I really enjoyed that. It was a change of pace. I enjoyed teaching when I was at FSU in graduate school. And these were students who all had day jobs, virtually all of them, and day jobs, and they were going to school at night to get a degree. In fact, I think part of them, I think they just started an MBA degree. I may have been teaching a course or two in their MBA program. I was not a very seasoned teacher to be teaching people getting master's degrees. So basic marketing and retailing were the courses. But I enjoyed that a lot, grading papers. I would take a change of clothing, change out of my Wonder Bread uniform and put on a suit and tie and go eat dinner in the faculty dining room, and then go teach the class a couple of nights a week. So it was a good add-on experience. And actually it made me want even more to get into marketing, real marketing. Now, the sales function is an important part of marketing, but it's not the strategic part. It's the hard labor part, and key and very important. And I understood the importance of it, but my hope still was to work in headquarters in marketing.
So do you remember your job title when you started at Wonder Bread, and then were you promoted, or did anything change during your tenure there?
Well, my job title was driver salesman, and with a route number. I don't remember what the route number was, but then after about a year, a little over a year, I was promoted to be Jim Morris's assistant supervisor. And that was really a very difficult job because most of the time as the assistant supervisor, I was the one to pull the routes during vacation time. So when the driver would be gone, it was my job to drive his route. So you had to go learn the route, where to park, how to check in, how to check out. It was pretty complicated. And another thing they did, they put me through driver training course on how to teach it, how to learn it, and how to teach defensive driving as a supervisor. And so here I was, 22-year-old in the Teamsters local, been run by Jimmy Hoffa. And my assignment was, now you go with these veteran truck drivers and you tell them how to drive safely and how to park and how to do all those things. I don't think my suggestions were very well received. I felt like a Lieutenant JG in the Navy being assigned to a ship and telling the old salts there how to run their ship. They'd done a lot for a long time without having a new wet behind the ears supervisor telling them how to drive.
Well, that's interesting. I've always thought of you as a very safe driver, and I feel like you've taught me some defensive driving tips over the years. So maybe some of that knowledge stuck with you.
Well, I think it has actually. I think I've been saved from some driving tickets over the years by practicing that, and my driving record, knock on wood, has been pretty safe and pretty good. I find most people, at least speaking, family members don't generally appreciate my comments about how to drive better. Except for you. I think you were always willing to try to learn something.
So let's talk about my mom during that time period, 64, 65, maybe part of 66. Was she happy in Dearborn? What was her situation like in your view?
Well, she was busy at home taking care of you and Ginger. And I realized years later she was unhappy that she wasn't going to college, which she was able to do eventually. But she told me once about a next door neighbor that she met and was talking to. And the neighbor knew I'd gone to college, and this was not a college area in Dearborn at the time, and said to Pat, seeing me go early in the morning, wearing a uniform, something like, well, don't worry, Pat, someday he'll find a better job. And I think it humiliated her, and she didn't like that. And so in the meantime, my former supervisor, Jim Morris, had left Wonder Bread and gone to work for Pfizer. And he told the district manager, oh, I've got a really good candidate for you. You ought to talk to him. And Jim contacted me and said, at least have dinner with the guy. So the district manager invited Pat and me to join him for dinner. And no problem winning Pat over. That getting out of the bread business and joining the pharmaceutical business would be a good move. She urged me to do that. I'm thankful she did. I was reluctant to leave because I felt an obligation. After all, Pfizer's scholarship saved me. I mean, it was a huge difference in my life, which I've reported in the early.
You mean the Wonder Bread scholarship, not the Pfizer scholarship?
Sorry, thank you for correcting me. Yes, the Wonder Bread scholarship saved me. And I was reluctant to leave. I didn't really like the job. I felt that my talents weren't being used as much as they could be, that I could do more headquarters environment. Didn't see that on the handwriting, at least not in the near future. And so I accepted the offer. And I remember I had my exit interview. They were not happy. They wanted to know, well, what could we do to make the job better for you, whatever. And I said, I'm not sure there's anything you really can do other than working in headquarters, and that's what I wanted. And it just wasn't available. So I resigned from undergrad and joined Pfizer Pharmaceuticals.
So they didn't offer you more money or anything like that, or a choice spread route, or I guess you were assistant manager. That wouldn't matter so much.
Right. Well, they couldn't do that. That would be breaking the
union rules.
The union rules. And I was making pretty good money. I mean, I was making at the time, my memory is almost $10,000 a year, which was actually pretty good money. 9,000 or something like that. It was actually fairly good money. So no, they didn't offer me a counter offer. I think they felt that there really wasn't much more. I was slated to be in sales management, not in marketing management. That was the slot they had me in. And I understand that's a hard slot. They needed well-trained men and probably women eventually. I don't know if that ever happened. They needed well-trained people to be in that sales management position. And you couldn't do sales management unless you'd been a sales rep and know the culture and traditions and what the job is all about. So it just wasn't meant to be.
So that's a pretty big change going from Wonder Bread to Pfizer. How did that change your life?
Well, huge change. It was an opportunity to work for a bonus. I was on my own initially, much more. It was a clean job. Pfizer provided a company car, expense account, of course, all travel expenses paid. And my clientele, rather than being hardworking, good men and women who were grocers, my clientele were now physicians and nurses and office receptionists for doctors. So it was a different world. And instead of selling bread, I was selling medicine. A lot of similarities. The biggest similarity I've always said in sales is not to push your customer, but to push yourself. To make more calls, to make, in the bread business, put up more bread displays, work harder than your competitive bread men. Pharmaceutical business, same kind of thing. Make additional calls. So I was hired January 2nd, I think it was, in 1966. My initial training started in a hotel room with the senior salesman, hospital rep named Wes Harris, a great guy, senior guy. He worked there a long time, knew a lot, taught me a lot. And I remember the poor guy saying, gosh, do you have to smoke? Because I was a heavy smoker then. I smoked, a lot of people smoked. He didn't smoke. And in January, it was hard to open the door of the motel, the room where he was training me to get fresh air. And now I'm very sympathetic. I feel, gosh, how awful. But smokers back then, myself included, were so inconsiderate because it was more the norm to be smoking than the exception. And that's certainly something that has changed, and that's a good change.
Do you remember what kind of cigarettes you smoked?
Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
And how many packs a day were you smoking when you were at worst?
Usually not more than a pack a day. I was pretty much a pack a day smoker. I smoked for a long time, but I smoked for about 10 years and eventually quit, and certainly glad that I did.
So how did your compensation change going from Wonder Bread to Pfizer?
Well, I found out later that up to that point, the most in base salary they'd ever offered anyone for a starting position was $7,200. And they offered that $600, or $7,200. That was $600 a month, right? And I said, I just can't take, that's a pay cut. That's a couple of $1,000 pay cut. I've been making like $9,000 or something. So they started a new high. They took it to $7,800, and I agreed to that because it's $7,800 plus a car. So that was worth something. and a chance for bonus. And as it turned out, in my first 6 months, I did very well and earned a very substantial bonus. In fact, enough to provide the down payment for our first home, which I did.
Well, Dad, this has been great. I've learned so much about the Wonder Years. And unless you have any closing thoughts, I look forward to hearing more about your early tenure at Pfizer as a pharmaceutical sales rep.
Well, Chuck, I've enjoyed these sessions. It's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to the next one as well. And you and Helen take care of yourselves and stay safe, wear your mask.
Will do, and give our very best to Sheila and Austin, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care, Dad.
Thanks, son. Love you a lot.
Love you too, Dad. Take care.